This is a sit-down interview. It's about 30 minutes with television photojournalist Dartise Johnson. I had just returned from 4 days of travel, two on a ship, three flights from Antarctica to San Antonio. So I was a bit jet lagged. And then Dartise was on a hot standby in the evening on Capitol Hill waiting on a vote. So we had a compressed amount of time to do the interview. Dartise has agreed to do a part two. So please, if you have additional questions, populate those in the comments below. We met down on the border maybe a year ago, 2 years ago. Gosh, I don't even know how long it's been. How long back was that?
It was 2023. So
Okay,
yeah, 2 years ago.
two
2 years ago.
years, right
Yeah.
on. And at the time, you were based in Chicago. And where are you at now?
Oh, I'm based in DC now. So
And
at the time I was based in Chicago. Now I'm based in DC. I did a little back and forth.
tell me, just give me a top level rundown. What are you working on?
Well, I'm kind of all over the place, man. Today I'm running around chasing senators in the Russell basement. Yesterday we had a live sit down interview with Vice President Vance. Last week I was in three countries in 3 days with the Secretary Nome, El Salvador, Mexico, somewhere else, Colombia. Yeah, so I'm kind of, we just do whatever we need to do, it's all part of the job. Tomorrow I'll be covering protests. So it is what it is.
How does that work when you go on a multi-country tour with a cabinet member? Like, how does that work logistically? Equipment? How do you fly? Are you flying commercial or are you on like a government aircraft?
Well, we were on the pool. We were the pool. I was the pool camera for that trip. So we were with the secretary on her plane. And the goal is to just travel as light as possible. You do take a suitcase. There weren't any separate interviews planned. I know I've done another like we call them VIP trips. I've done another VIP trip where, oh, you might possibly get a sit down interview, so then you might take a smaller light kit so that you can set things up. But this one, I brought my big camera, my Sony 400, run bag, live view 600, and then an extra backpack, and that was it. And then we were jumping off the plane, getting her coming down, getting in the motorcade, jumping in the motorcade, riding, jumping out of the motorcade, running to the position to try to get another shot, and that's just how that goes.
So
So we
in a
travel really light.
incredible. And now is the live view up and you're pushing all that footage in real time, or do
Yes,
you record in cam and play back?
live views up. As long as we have a signal, it's going out. If we don't have a signal, then of course we got a little feedback later. So like we went to the El Salvador prison, and as soon as we got on that compound, like signal was just gone. It was it was over, no more signal. So of course I shot everything in camera, and then while we were riding to the palace, because Secretary had a meeting with the president, and that's when I was feeding everything back
Okay.
as we were riding in vans from the prison to the palace.
Stateside, when you're doing like a bigger, when it's like an organized presentation, I don't know what you would call it. Is it considered a presser? Like when there's only a pool feed, like AG Merrick Garland came to Texas to Uvalde. I covered that story, but they
Okay.
didn't allow the photographers into the room where he was at. There was just a pool camera. So we all did our live shots out in the parking lot. What is that called? Is that considered a press conference when they're just kind of giving some remarks
Yeah,
live?
or like a spray. That's what we
Okay.
normally call it. It's a spray with remarks. So there were some events where that's all we had. Like I know when we were in Mexico City, we were in the Mexican palace. She met the Mexican president, and we literally were in a holding room. It was about five of us, and they squeezed us into a doorway. And at that point, I did have my sticks. I had my lighter Flowtech sticks with me, and I just kind of got blocked out, even though there was five of us. There was a small doorway that we had to squeeze into, so I just boomed my sticks up, and the person in front of me was kind of short, so I just kind of collapsed the sticks together and got in front of her and just pushed in and got the shot. And so it was a quick spray. It was really more like a photo op. Um, they shook hands and then they had to move over a little bit so we can get the flags in between, but get them in between the flags, and then that was about it.
So who decides something like that? Like you're going to shoot on the 400 camera, an ENG camera versus like an FX9 big sensor. When does that decision get made, and by
Well,
who?
there was kind of a rule for us. to own when you're doing these pool events to shoot with the 400, just because you might not have the throw that you need. Either the 400 or we have 280s as well. So I know some guys have gone internationally and taken a 280 just to have travel lighter. Like if I would have been, I had a sound guy that day. So that trip, so if I didn't have a sound guy, I probably was just going to take a 280 since it was just going to be me and a producer. But since I knew I was given a sound guy, I was like, I'm going to go ahead with the bigger camera since I have more control. I get better features, so to speak.
So I just got back from a job in Argentina, and
Yes.
commercial production, not for news or a member of an office. And the temporary import paperwork was quite a complicated process for me to bring in gear from the U.S. into Argentina and then take it out, going through customs, and like had to have a broker and a fixer and a local production company to represent us. Did you have to deal with any of that when you're on a government aircraft?
Negative. Don't have to deal with any of that. That was the best part about that. Now they did, I think Mexico did ask for serial numbers for just the camera. So like when we got off the plane, we're running to get under the wing to get her coming down, and the Mexico border agent was like, "Hey, we need your serial numbers." And so that was, luckily it was just three of us. Me, Soundman, and Print Pool. Print Pool was there, so they need serial numbers. So I just remember where mine was real quick. I keep the body armor on my camera and just kind of pulled back some things and was like, here you go, so I can get in position and get the shot that I needed. So that
Crazy.
that was a challenge. But the other countries we didn't have to worry about it. But like you said, if you're traveling commercially, yeah, I've been countries where you need a carnet, load in and show them whatever they need to see.
So tell me what you're working on tonight, right now.
Tonight they and just kind of hanging out, waiting for this boat. So
Okay, so you're not. Are
yeah,
you like doing it one hit an hour, or are you just on standby
no,
until
not
that boat
today. I'm
happens?
I'm on standby. I've done some. I was in the basement earlier, waiting for senators to go by to try to get some sound about the vote and some other things. But tonight, this week, the later guy. My shift, like a couple of guys, three of us, like rotate to work till 10 p.m. A few nights. So because I'm the late guy, I got roped in to just hanging out on the hill, waiting to see what they want to do with this vote.
Oh, man,
So
I guess some.
we're either gonna wait until it's over, or I'll get sent home early. One of the two.
This is all being a freelancer for most of my career. I have so many questions on the
Just
with
ask
what
them.
you
I'll
do.
answer the best I can. Yeah.
And I got a bunch of people on my YouTube channel, like aspiring students, or they're in the first couple of years in the business, and they ask me questions about what you do that's so different than what I do, and I don't know how to answer a lot of them. So I guess top level, like, how does your schedule work? Is it pretty consistent? A 5-day work week in certain days, or do you know a week out you're working nights versus daytime, or when and how do you know?
Well, the night shift schedule is on a rotation every 3 weeks. But so I have a set schedule for 5 days, but that schedule changes depending on my assignment. So like if I'm 11 to 7 today, but today's my late week, I'm 11 to 10 today. Yesterday we had the shoot with the vice president. So we had we had to be in early because the interview was early. They actually allowed us to preset the night before for the event. So I had a bit of a longer day the day before because we had the preset. We set up everything, set up the lights, ran all the cables, set up cameras, did a fax out with the New York transmission just to make sure they can hear, see and hear everything. So when we came back in the morning, that everything was good. We just used the sync the camera. We sync the cameras up. We use the Glass app to sync the cameras up, and then we sync the cameras up. Did another fax out with the mics and IFBs, and took it from there.
Now, did that for that interview with the vice president, did that run on air live, or was it just fed back?
Live on air.
How many cameras?
Just three, just three. We got three lines that we. Since we're on the White House compound, we're in the executive office building next door. There's fiber that runs, and so the White House, we just punch out a few lines, they home run to the bureau, and then they send those to New York. And so
And then
we were live. We were on the bridge with the control room.
so it switched in New York in that case. And
Yeah, we were in a control room. We got on a bridge with the control room because it was for a morning show. So the host, one of the hosts on the morning show. Do you want names and everything? You know,
we
just
can keep it generic. I don't want to
okay.
risk, it causing any drama later, I
Got you.
guess.
So the
So
host for the show came in, to the White House, hosted the show from the North Lawn, and then walked over to the executive office building to be able to do the interview live. And
so
just
if you
so
have
happened. Go ahead.
sorry, so if you have the host there, is there prompters involved?
We did not set up a prompter because he didn't need one. So he was hosting his portion of the show from the North Lawn of the White House. He was coming over to the EEOB just for our interview. So I know in the initial request there was an email saying we need prompter and return. But after talking to I happened to be the lead on the shoot, so I was talking to the producer about what they wanted, and he was like, "We need prompter." I'm like, "Well, do you really need prompter? Because he's not going to be, he's going to just toss to him and then go straight to the interview." He was like, "Yeah, you're right. We don't need prompter." So we didn't bother bringing that up. We have a pretty big prompter, so of course if I can help not bringing that and setting it up, that's always helpful. But we didn't need it.
Where's the prompter operator in a situation like that if you're hosting remotely?
Oh, in New York. So they're coming out of the studio. I don't know exactly. I'm assuming they're in the studio. I actually haven't been to our New York studios, so I don't know physically where they are, but they're rolling it from New York.
So in a case like that, let's say you did have the prompter, you're sending three fiber feeds from three cameras back to New York. You got a return signal of the show's switch coming back
And
to
then
you
we have a
guys,
return from the prompter,
and a
and
prompter
we
return,
would feed that prompter return
and then your
into the
host has got
prompter.
an IFB back to the control room, and then to
Correct.
the cam ops. Are they on a separate line?
Yeah,
What are you listening to?
we're on our director's bridge, so we can hear the director. He assigns us, cameras and lets us know when our shots are going to be hot or not. Even yesterday was a couple of times where my guest might have sat back and I needed a little less headroom or a little more headroom, or he was like, "Hey, can I get a little headroom? Can I get a little less headroom?" And we make our moves. So we had two ISOs and we had a camera on a slider, a two shot on a slider.
Who does the lighting on something like that? Do you bring in a lighting crew?
We have a guy. It depends on the assignment, but yesterday we had a lighting director on site. So we call him. I mean, he's a staff employee, and he was assigned to the job. And so I just talked to him and was like, "Hey, this is what we got. What do you need from us?" And in this situation, he was just like, "Hey, I need sticks, I need sands, and I need some background lights." So we all kind of bring in. I think we were using Practilite 602, 632s by Kinotech. And so we were using those for background lights. And then he has his own. That we flew the Intelitech light cloths, the 1x3 light cloths. And then so we go in, we set shots. We actually run BNCs to a monitor, look at our shots. What do we want to do? And then set the shots, and then we'll build our cameras, and then he'll start setting keys, and then we'll help out making lighting our backgrounds.
So you got two close ups opposing directions, and then you got your third on a slider that's like a two shot profile,
Correct.
sliding back and forth. Is that the idea?
Correct.
And then when you add a fourth camera, what is that angle when that
Normally if we
happens?
add a fourth camera, we'll put it on the primary subject's ISO, so it'll be just a wider and a tighter shot
So you
on
got like
that.
an over the shoulder maybe where you see some of the
Even
host.
that or dirty. There's several. It all
Yeah.
depends on what the producer wants. Sometimes it's dirty where we keep the subject, the anchor or whoever in the shot, but it just depends on what you want.
And
Sometimes it's dirty, sometimes it's just two ISOs.
nice. Okay. What
I
kind of
know when I
cameras? Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
I did a Trump interview a couple of weeks ago. I was trying to think, and then I did a wider, and it's a more of a normal, interview type, like from here up. And then it was in Roosevelt Room, so I tried to widen out a little bit and get some of a bookshelf and a fireplace, and that was a four camera shoot. But that day we were just shooting straight to tape and fed it back.
what you're doing, this isn't new to you with the current administration. Is that right? You got some other experience on the Hill and in the White House?
Oh yeah, yeah. I was here in DC for about 4 years before I left and went to Chicago for about 2 years, and then I just got back to DC.
For your Trump interview, what cameras and lenses do you guys use?
Um, just depends on on the job. I think we use the nines on the Trump interview. We used the nine. Yesterday we used the FX6s, and that was simply because two of the guys have like some. So all of us have a big camera, a small camera, either a Z90 or a 280. And then for that, we some of us have sixes, some of us have nines. So the two guys that I requested on my crew, they had sixes, and so I just got a spare six so that I can use instead of trying to pair my nine with the sixes.
Got it.
Go ahead,
No. How do you get all that to the location? Do you pick
man.
up a vehicle every day, or you have your own like take home?
I have a take home vehicle. I have most of my gear with me. Uh,
So you're all set up, audio
so
kit
we're all
lights, transmission,
yep,
and you got an ENG camera and you got some cinema style cameras all on board, ready to go.
yep.
Man,
And we do have a sound guy, A1 assigned to the shoot too. So he handles mics and IFBs. He runs two lines to each of us, and then we had engineering on site as well. So they handled the transmission out and provided phone lines, hard lines, phone lines for the IFB, which isn't always the case. We did a show just Monday at the Department of Homeland Security where we had a SAT truck, but the SAT truck just provided data, and then they sent that signal up through a window. Just kind of, I think the device is called a ubiquity. It just sent the signal to us. We received it. We split the signals and ran it through the live view.
so
Yeah,
as watching the news from here in Texas, not being in DC, and being in the business for the last 25 years, from the outside, it looks to me like there's a whole lot more access and content for the media with this current administration and in the past. Like it seems like there's more just like live show, unscripted versus prepared speeches and sound bites. Is that an accurate assessment?
yeah. I mean, the current president he likes to get his message out, and so it's a lot of opportunity to receive that message. Whether it's a briefing, whether it's his come on in the Oval, whether it's him talking on his way walking out on the South Lawn, walking out of the residence, or walking out of the Oval to get on Marine One. Yesterday I think we saw he was actually talking on Air Force One while he was traveling down to Florida. So, there is a lot of access, to Mr. Trump. The network I work for, we talk to him an awful lot as we get the access to sit down interviews with him when other networks aren't necessarily getting that access.
What would you consider? What's your official title right now?
Whatever I want to be. I like to call myself video journalist, but I'm news cameraman, network news cameraman. It's
And
really
you're
some would
employed,
call it ENG technician, but we
and
all
you
we
you
do the
work
same
out of
thing.
a bureau, right? You're not like
Correct.
HQ.
Work out of the bureau. HQ is in New York.
And how can you take me through your journey? Like, how did I assume you started local? Like, how did you climb the ladder to get to national network level working out of a bureau?
Well, just experience. So I started in Savannah, Georgia, working local. Even before that, I was in college. I did a little working at a small little cable station where they were doing news like 8 minutes on the 8 minutes an hour. Started there. I was working at Applebee's, and there's somebody pointed out and was like, "Hey, you're mass comm." I went to school for communications, and was like, "Hey, you're mass comm, aren't you?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "That's the newsman right there." He would come into the bar every night and flirt with the bartender. And so I went and introduced myself to him, told him, I'm not quite in my major yet, but I love to volunteer. And then that's what I did. He said, "Well, come on down to the station." And so I volunteered. He showed me the deck. I think he had an M2 deck, but they shot on DVC Pro at the time. This was like 2000, 99 maybe, 98, probably 99, 2000-ish. And, um, and so then he just sent me out on my own once he showed me the ropes, and I shot a few stories. I attempted to be on air. I was like, I don't like this. And then I ended up moving back. This was in a small town called Statesboro, Georgia. I was going to Georgia Southern University. Then I transferred to Savannah State University. And while I was in school at Savannah State University, I started working at the TV station as a production assistant. Making like 5.25 an hour. Running a studio, running prompter. The intro job was to run the prompter in studio and run a studio camera. And then you got a chance to get a quarter raise for everything else that you learn. So if you learn audio board, if you learn Chiron, if you learn how to roll tapes, you got a quarter raise. And one of the photographers was leaving, and he came and said, "Hey, there's a shooter job open. If you still want it, if you want it, I can recommend you." And so I was like, "Well, how much is the pay?" And he was like, "It's like $9 an hour." I'm like, "I'm in. Let's go." So it was a process of me going in and applying for the job. And then they got offered to me like a Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, but I had to turn it down because during that communication, it wasn't translated that I was still a student in school. So I couldn't work a 9 to 5. And then maybe a few months later, they asked, "Well, what can you work?" And we worked it out where they found a schedule for me. And so then I eventually finished school, moved up markets, um, and then eventually made my way to Chicago. And then I was there about 12 years. And back in 2009, we all, at the local shop I was working at, a bunch of us got laid off. And the network they had network openings for like a field tech position. And one of the guys actually beat me out for that job. We used to work special projects at local, and he recommended that I apply for the job out here back in 2019 or 2018.
No, was it the same media conglomerate, that
Yes,
job application, or were you switch? Okay. So, and I assume that's
yes.
how it all works, right? You get kind of promoted up from local to national from
Well, and
within the
that wasn't
company.
at the time I wasn't working for that company, but in the past I had. So at the time I was not working for that company. I just applied because the guy recommended me, and I think sometimes it's about just getting your resume seen. Whether you got hundreds and hundreds of resumes, sometimes it helps to have somebody, "Hey, maybe you should look at this one." And I think that helped me just to be able to get somebody to see my resume, and then I got hired.
Nice. I'm going to hit
And that was
stop.
kind of how I always had a dream of working at the next level, and I was kind of discouraged um, talking to a few people. You said you needed to stop.
Yeah, let me make a new clip. I don't trust this thing. Like it gets how many years in before the money started getting decent?
Oh, let's see. It wasn't until I got to Chicago, really, because it's a union shop, and typically the unions will fight for more pay, and but the unions you get penalty and supposedly some more job security. That wasn't necessarily the case for me, but definitely Chicago is when I started seeing the most money.
And so for me, it was like about a decade before I started
Uh,
like not struggling financially. How
yeah, I
long?
guess it was like 9 years, I guess. Yeah, for me, it was about eight,
Okay,
9 years.
cool. Man, you're ahead of the curve. Well done.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, you got a family. Talk to me about that and how you managed working the crazy hours and being in and out of the country in different cities and
Oh,
keeping
that's
everything
that's
going at home.
always that's always a challenge. That's a challenge even before. Even working local, you work crazy hours sometimes, so that's always a challenge. And then I have a young child, so that was new to me, and that throws a whole nother wrench in. So just try to communicate, with my wife the best I can, and let her know what I'm doing. Try to plan things out, as far as what needs to be done, and we just try to execute it. Create a plan and execute.
My wife and I think, gosh, 5 or 6 years of conflict on the when I'm leaving for work. The question, what time are you gonna be home for dinner?
Right.
No
I don't
idea.
know.
And
Yeah.
then, she'd check in with me throughout the day. Well, you think you can be home by 5? What do you know now? It's now 2 in the afternoon. Are you going to be home tonight? And I still I don't know. It's not in my hands. And now she doesn't ask. And, sometimes I make it. I try to always make it. And obviously, often it doesn't work out. But it took a while in our relationship to kind of figure out that flow and sort of accept that it was all in someone else's hands on a work day.
Right. I think it was more challenging local news, but here it seems to be a little more, a little more scheduled. Tonight's kind of weird because sometimes you just have things that happen. But like if I'm scheduled at the White House, you're based off whenever they call the lid at the White House. If you're pulled on the White House day, it's whenever they're done. That's when we're done. Um, but that's rare. This time around, I've been having such a variety of assignments that I hadn't been at the White House as much. But
Um,
we figure it out. It's just one of those things. I'm never really home during dinner time per se, so we just kind of adjust, and either she'll save me something or we'll eat together a little later.
so I have people reach out to me often that are students or even like in high school and they're considering a degree, going to college for mass comm or journalism or filmmaking. And they all ask variations on the same question, like, how do you get started working professionally, or where do you go? What I guess, and I'm going to ask you the same question. What kind of advice would you give to like a student that's they haven't totally made up their mind yet, but they're interested in what you and I do?
Hmm. Well, I know what helped me was volunteering. I don't know if the industry still accepts those because I kind of just volunteered internship. Like I said, I walked up to the guy and asked him, I'm in school, can I volunteer? And he said yes. I had another situation at a radio station in Savannah. I walked in, hey, I'd love to volunteer. And they found a spot for me. It wasn't even recording or anything on air. I was in a promotions department. So I would show up wherever they needed me and help build, their little on-site remotes and, hand out water or do whatever they needed me to do. I volunteered. I did volunteer at my church early on. We had a television ministry, and I learned how to run camera, shoot head on, shoot cutaways. I learned to assistant direct. I learned to direct, at the church. Plus, while I was really doing a lot because I figured out this is what I want to do. I need to get as much experience doing it. Now I understand that was 20 some years ago, and I know the industries have changed. So I don't know if you can just walk in somewhere and volunteer. So that's a really good question. But I would say you know, immerse yourself in the craft the best way you can. Find a mentor, find someone that does it. I mean, I could easily see somebody with a smaller production house accepting someone in, that to come out on the shoots and help out. PA style, grip, something like that.
If you were to predict your future or have some wishes in the direction your career goes, next like 10 plus years, are you happy with what you're doing? You want to kind of stay in the bureau life on Capitol Hill, or are
Right
you
now,
thinking?
I'm loving. I'm happy to be back. I'm loving what I'm doing, man. I'm loving. Like the first time around, I learned so much. You kind of you have your skill set. You have everything that you have come to know over the whatever how many years it was, 20 years, 19 years in the business, and you bring that to the table, and then you work with guys that have been doing it at this level for so long, and you pick up a little from this guy, you pick up a little from this guy, and you learn, and it's just, and then to be able to take what you have, and then take what you learn from others, and then just be able to come in a empty room or what looks like an empty room and build a studio with however many lights, 10, 12, 15 lights, cameras, and have a solid image of what you want and then create it. It's amazing to me. It's exciting to me. When you walk into a room and be like, all right, I don't know what we're gonna do. Let's take it in and figure it out.
Well, Dartise,
So
I don't want to keep you too long. I really appreciate you making a little window of time to chat with me and the community here. If people want to follow what you're doing, is there a way they can keep tabs on you on social media?
yeah, I'm Dartise, Dartise. That's my handle on Twitter, on Instagram. Um, those are the only places I know it's definitely just Dartise. But
All right. Well, Dartise Johnson from the DC Bureau doing some big stuff, national level news coverage every day. I appreciate you jumping on with me, and I hope we get to stand side by side on some breaking story in the near future.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
All right. You take care.
All right. Bye bye.